What's up, you guys? It's your girl ubuhle.benkosiiiiii, and yes, it is True Crime Tuesday. Before we get started with today's video, kindly subscribe to my channel, press that like button, and comment down below other true crime cases and video ideas that you would want me to cover. So, I'm back. Let's just not talk about the gap. Cool. I've been writing exams and it's cold. It's cold, and like I just realized today as I was like going through my notes that I've been saying it's a 6-part series. It's not. It's a 4-part series. Like, even in my notes it says 4-part series. I just thought I had made an error, but as I'm scrolling I'm like, where's the rest of the story? So I'm sorry, this is part what? Oh, this is part 3 of our 4-part Devilsdorp series. So we're almost at the end. We're halfway through the whole thing. So yeah, without further ado, let us continue. So the last time that we spoke, Cecilia and her group's revenge rampage had just began with Joy and Natasha. Next was Reginald Bendixen. In August of 2012, Ria Groenewald received a message that said, "Hi Ria, have you said goodbye to Reg? I hope you have." Reginald Bendixen was now Ria's mentor and had been for a very long time, and he did not approve of Ria and Cecilia's friendship. He had advised Ria to stay away. Cecilia had told her followers that Reg was to blame for the change in Ria, and he needed to be taken out. They believed her. Zach was now in Cecilia's good graces because of that whole stunt that he pulled with Joy and Natasha. Miranda was now desperately trying to become Cecilia's favorite. So she said that she would commit the murder for Reg with her 14-year-old daughter, Marcel. Zach went along with Miranda and Marcel. Zach had an axe and Miranda had a knife. They pretended to be police investigators investigating the murders of Joy and Natasha. They had uniforms and everything. Zach hit Reg on the head with an axe. Soon after, Miranda jumped in very quickly and started brutally stabbing him. Through his journey, Zach then joined in berserkly. Miranda says that it was as if Zach had actually lost his mind. Miranda ended the attack by slitting Reg's throat, and Marcel stood there and watched everything happen. This murder was deemed occult related as well, and the connection between Reg, Joy, and Natasha were all drawn back to Ria, and then drawn obviously back to Cecilia. Once they had made these connections, they went to Ria, and Ria had pointed to Cecilia as a suspect. Cecilia's hatred for Ria became very evident to investigators. Ria had moved onto the same street as Cecilia when they were really close, to be close to her during those high nights. And on the day of Reg's murder, Ria received a package of meat. It had said, "Sorry, this is all the doggies left you. Here's a piece of your precious Reg." At this point, even Candace, Cecilia's best friend, was like 100% sure that Cecilia had to have been involved. Ria, funny enough, was now also being treated as a suspect because of her connection with all of the victims and overcomers through Christ popping up in all of these murders. So she was treated as a suspect along with Cecilia and Miranda. Death threats started pouring in their neighborhood for both Ria and Cecilia. Another like weird part of this case is that there are photos of Zach and Cecilia like attending functions and being dressed up as Satanists, which is like a complete contradiction to like literally everything. Michaela one day had asked her mother if she had contact with a good lawyer. Michaela went on rambling about the murders of Joy, Natasha, and Reginald, and how these people were murdered. Because of this, Michaela had become the group's weakest link and had also expressed the want to leave. Michaela's mom had now gotten into contact with the police, expressing her concern, and just 2 days after the police had applied for a warrant to search the properties of the entire group, a call came in to say that Michaela Valentine had been murdered. Zach Valentine, Miranda, and Cecilia had carefully planned out the death of their fellow member. They made sure that Zach was not present at the scene of the murder, and they made sure that he had an alibi. But he made sure to prepare the scene for them. Zach had put sleep medication in Michaela's coffee that morning, so when Miranda and Marcel arrived, they found her knocked out. Also in this crime, Cecilia had wanted Marcel to prove herself at 14. Miranda entered the home of Michaela and Zach, and when she got into the bedroom, she had a hammer, and she began hitting Michaela on the head repeatedly. But because her head was on a pillow, her head kept like bouncing back, and Miranda realized that this was gonna wake her up. Miranda then started stabbing Michaela, and then she invited her 14-year-old Marcel to come and join in, who was obviously horrified because Marcel had a relationship with Michaela and had seen Michaela as like her older sister. So witnessing this was obviously really terrifying for her. Obviously, Marcel was pressured by her mom. She went over and stabbed Michaela once, but then made the excuse that her knife was too blunt. So she then stepped away and Miranda continued stabbing her. Michaela was found with 65 stab wounds, including defense wounds. There was blood everywhere, on the ceiling, on the bed, on the floor, literally on the entire bedroom. And when Zach came back home, he made sure that he was coming back home with someone as proof that he was not involved. He came back with a real estate agent. So apparently Zach was like planning to sell the house or in the process of, and made sure that that day he had set up an appointment with the real estate agent that would come in with him and obviously witness this. He tried to not look suspicious, but the crazy part was that when he walked in and saw his murdered wife on the bed, all he wondered was, where were their cats? And he asked the real estate agent if he could still sell the house. Yet again, because of their connection, I don't know, like, where they're getting this from. But it was, again, occult related, satanic related. That's how it was deemed with the police officers. Clearly, there was a police officer within the station or cases that kept misleading and labeling these crimes wrong, so that they were kind of put to the side. He, thank God, was eventually taken off the case because they could see like he's not taking the case anyway. Zach never once cried for Michaela at all. Like, he was never ever seen crying or mourning for the woman that he so-called loved. And Cecilia once slipped up to someone outside of the group and had told them the truth about Zach and how he was literally a cold-blooded murderer. I mean, they all were, but he was like, he seemed to be enjoying this part. So their next victim now was Ria's son, Joshua. But before we get into this whole Joshua, I know this is someone who is kind of important to the story. And I haven't mentioned him because I didn't want to like confuse things and whatnot. But remember like 4 seconds ago when I said Cecilia had slipped and told someone the truth about Zach. Well, this man that Cecilia had told, his name was Mr. X. Well, it wasn't his name, obviously. But in the documentary, he talks and hides his identity, obviously because of fear. Mr. X basically knew Cecilia through Natasha. He eventually moved in with Zach after the death of Michaela and slowly started becoming close to the group. He wasn't part of Electus Prodeus, but he was always around them. Because he was always around them, slowly but surely he began gathering secrets about the group, and Cecilia had kept a very close eye on him because of this. One day, he had approached one of his friends for help, saying that he had evidence and proof that he had information on these murders. He had approached this police officer friend. He also approached this police officer because he wanted a way out. And he couldn't literally just walk out because they knew he had their secrets. Unfortunately, the same police officer happened to be a friend of Cecilia's. This also happened to be that investigator that was pushing the whole like satanic murder thing that was put off the case. This was still him. Like, he was so close to Cecilia that he would visit her and give her guns as gifts. So, besties. Mr. X had then told this police officer, who was how do you say it, a colonel, I think. A colonel? Colonel? Oh my god, let's just call him a police officer. This colonel then had advised Mr. X, like, look dude, I need like solid evidence. So take this tape recorder, record like an entire confession, and then we can move on from there. Also promised that the night that he would get the confession, that he would be waiting outside Cecilia's flat to like help him escape. When he was in the flat that night, he got a full-blown confession of all their murders, and he was like obviously starting to get anxious. So during that time, Zach had then left the room like for a period of time, and he was like, why? And once Zach had disappeared, Mr. X began panicking. He left as soon as possible and expected to find the colonel outside, but he wasn't. So here he was with a confession after coming from a group of murderers outside their apartment all by himself with no backing, no protection. He got on his motorcycle and then realized the reason why Zach had went outside was because he was putting a tracker on his motorcycle. So then Zach would obviously be able to follow him around. He then called a friend because he was like now in such a big pickle. He called a friend to come and pick him up, and the friend was like, look dude, hide. I'm coming to get you. So he hid in the bushes, and while he was hiding in the bushes, he had saw Zach's car and two other cars following Zach, passing looking for him, and he had been so grateful for this friend. And I'm grateful for this friend, but actually that colonel can jump in River Jordan, because what is your issue? After all of this, after his life was in danger, he still gave the tape recording to the colonel. I'm not even joking with you, like, Mr. X, you are the man. Thank you so much for putting your life at risk because of these people's lives, and obviously justice needs to be served, but are you stupid? Why would you do that? Anyways, it's obvious now that the colonel was involved, and the plot to kill Joshua fell through, and that was the end of the satanic murder spree. It just, all the cases went cold. I started you back into 2016. Back to 2016, Captain Ben Boysen was actually so cool, because after LaRue's confession, he had tried his ultimate best to pin down Cecilia and the group for what they had done. He even worked while he was in hospital. Now that Captain Ben was on the case, he obviously had to go back and look at the satanic murders as well. And then they realized that a lot of documents and information was missing from case files of 2012. So this obviously hindered his ability to investigate the satanic / appointment murders. The recording was in the evidence room, but so damaged that it was like inaudible. Funny enough, but when it was handed over, it seemed to be fine. Like, the whole confession was on there. Captain Ben, shout out to that gent, even laid charges against corrupt policemen and the colonel who had been working with Cecilia underground for being corrupt. And because of what they had done, it essentially messed up the whole 2012 investigation. I think now we can successfully say that the whole satanic and occult stuff was a red herring. It was a way to distract from the real issue at hand, which was a narcissistic, selfish, sadistic person who felt that if anybody was against her, they did not deserve to live. and her need for revenge over someone who had their own free will overcame her, and she was a very big manipulator. And this is the cause for the satanic murders, and then greed for the appointment murders. The prosecution had prepared very hard for this trial, and during this time LaRue was like kind of like just like busting at the seams, because he was even sending Ben to places in his mother's apartment where they had stored their guns. They filmed the whole thing when they seized the weapons, because like Cecilia had like over 500 knives along with other weapons, but those like knives were in like, I don't know if you know, I've seen it like for shoes, but it's like a bag with like slots, like a cubbyhole kind of thing with Bob, and she had it hanging at the back of her door, just like all of her knives. LaRue went on to explain how the appointment murders took place. The victims were lured to a meetup location close by the Kosana flats. Miranda would then detain them and threaten them for their banking details. LaRue would strangle them to death. When they went to Cecilia's apartment, they sprayed it with Blue Star, which is almost like, what is it called? Luminol. It's almost like luminol, basically tests for the presence of blood, and the place lit up. The blood was sent for testing, and the blood was the blood of Anthony Schofield. Then another murder came up. Like, these people don't have peace. 4 months after the appointment murder spree, on the 27th of January 2016, 2 days after my birthday, that's not relevant, in Randfontein, Glenn McGregor's family found him dead in his bathtub, fully clothed. He had been strangled and shot, and no direct cause of death or injury was visible because he had been put in a bath of hot water. He lived in a pretty secluded area, like literally in the middle of nowhere, like it was almost like a farm, and Miranda Stain had been the one to shoot him twice in the back. They made him, before he died, to transfer money to Miranda's account, which is the dumbest thing you could have done. If a man is found dead, the last transaction is going to be obviously investigated, and who are they going to find? Miranda Stain anyway, because she's a genius. What she also did was that when he transferred that money, as a reference, I'm not even freaking kidding with you, the reference was excellent fork. Not fork, but you know, F word. So kind of like saying that he had paid for like services and stuff, and this was like the last degrading thing that he could have done to this man before she killed him. And obviously, like I just said, the last transaction was traced back to Miranda. Al had also been present at this murder and had been the one to carry his body into the bathtub. Another thing that had come out was how abusive Miranda had been to LaRue. Marcel was kind of like the apple of her eye, but she literally used to beat LaRue. So it was kind of like the case of LaRue and Marcel obviously were minors. Well, Marcel was, and then LaRue was just an abused boy who loved his mother and would do anything that she said and anything for her approval, and even if he was like no, she literally beat the out of him. Enter into the scene another man, John Barnard, who had then also been connected with the murder of Glenn McGregor, and when they found him, like they didn't even have to like pinch him a little bit. He vomited, word vomits, and came out also with a confession. And this confession had also corroborated with LaRue's second statement, like the statement that they were using where he was telling all the tea. John Barnard, smart guy, came forward with his lawyer and had settled on a plea agreement with the prosecution that in exchange for his testimony against Electus Prodeus, he would then receive a lesser charge. LaRue also came forward and accepted a plea bargain. This meant he would testify his mother, sister, Zach Valentine, and Cecilia Stain. A crazy part of this, I think this is why I recommend the documentary, because like I'm not even joking with you, one of the journalists working on this case fell in love with LaRue Stain and started dating him. I say what I said, I'm not going back. I understand we're allowed to empathize with people, but I mean, come on, girl. What? But like genuinely, she literally like visits him in prison and stuff, and like speaks on his behalf, and girl, it's a lot. It was, however, really hard to pin these crimes on Cecilia, because guess what? When these crimes took place, Cecilia was at her home in her apartment at the Kosana Flats. She was never present and was very much like Charles Manson, who literally made people do the worst of the worst and would never get his hands dirty. Witnesses against Cecilia, it's really crazy to hear, but they were literally peeing their pants. Scared of Cecilia and testifying against her. And when they did testify against her, all of them are really traumatized, including Ria Groenewald. During the investigation, it was then discovered that Ria was an important part of this case, and they started trying to find her. Ria had left Krugersdorp. She was done, girl, just done. She had changed her phone number, dropped all contact with everyone and anyone she ever knew in that town. Eventually, when Captain Ben, because he's the man, found her, she had expressed her fear of getting involved again, citing that she was scared that her involvement would then cause other people to lose their lives as well. It's really sad how she blamed herself. She had already, before she left, given information to police officers who did absolutely nothing to help her, and this is why she was so hesitant to talk to the police again. She eventually answered the email from Ben, obviously, and then she started giving information. Ria, unfortunately, had still believed that Cecilia did have supernatural powers and was afraid of her still. Cecilia Stein had orchestrated 4 murders in 2012, dubbed the Satanic Murders, plus the 2016 appointment murders, and also the murder of Peter and Joan Meyer and Glenn McGregor. Okay. The part that we just came off obviously was really sad, and I never intend to like lessen or disrespect victims in our cases. But the part that we just came back from was obviously really sad because we talked about the loss of people's lives. And this part also includes the loss of, yes, yet again, another life. But this story is juicy. Juicy. Because now we're about to turn up for real. On the 16th of December 2016, a car was found burning on the side of the road near the town of Petrusstein. I think that's how you say it. The car was later discovered as the car of Zach Valentine. A charred body was unfortunately found in the driver's seat of this car, and it looked like it had been a tragic accident. However, some of the details weren't adding up. The car was damaged, but the license plate was barely touched. There was no skid marks on the road. It literally looked like someone had drove the car, parked it on the side of the road, and lit it on fire. Before Zach's mom could even breathe in the direction of that town, Miranda came in, posed as Zach's sister, and identified the body as indeed the body of Zach Valentine. And he was declared dead. It seemed as if the gang had gotten rid of yet again another one of their members. Even though he wasn't the best person, I mean, no one deserves to die. This is when the death claim we spoke about came in. The death claim was obviously not paid out because of how suspicious everything looked. And something as simple as the blood type didn't even match. I mean, it looks as if this isn't Zach's body. So if this wasn't Zach's body, whose body was it? The insurers approached the police, obviously, with this confusing information. Zach was later then connected to the 2012 Satanic Murders and the Mayor's double murder because he had been in the car with Miranda and Marcel the day murders. Remember how they said like they saw Miranda driving around, making my way downtown, driving around the town on the day of the murders. Their statements also didn't match up. Coincidentally, Zach also disappeared a day, literally the day before him and Miranda was set to take a polygraph test in connection to the Mayor's double murder. It now looked like Zach had faked his own death. But why? They began looking for Zach up and down, left and right. And like the full story is on the documentary, but essentially like this police officer was working on finding Zach, came home with the papers, and then his girlfriend's like, hey, I know this dude. The time when we go with the church, with the homeless people and we take them to a camp, one of the men is there. Like, his name is Michael de Villiers. Girl, what? Michael de Villiers? That's not Michael de Villiers. That's Zach Valentine. So Zach was alive and he was living amongst the homeless community of Krugersdorp still. And this is when that policeman's girlfriend had seen Zach's missing posters, had said, I know this man, I know this boy. That's not Michael de Villiers. I mean, that's not Zach Valentine, that's Michael de Villiers. So the next time they had another camp, she was on the lookout and she saw him and then had identified him with one of his tattoos. And then she was like, girl, that's not Michael. His name is not Michael. That's Zach. The police found him and detained him 6 months after he had faked his own death. Which is so sick because his family thought he was dead for 6 months. Disgusting. Yeah. 6 months after he faked his own death and only 3 days after, LaRue and Marcel had been detained and arrested. Zach Valentine was found alive and well and had been arrested for fraud. So Zach, Cecilia, Miranda were all behind bars now and had all been denied bail. Now the whole of Electus Prodeus was behind bars. But the question now remains, whose body was in that car? Swoop! Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I'll see you on our next upload Tuesday. We're almost there. Just one more part. Just one more part. We're almost there, I promise. just come back next week. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, send me kisses, stalk me. And I'll see you guys next Tuesday.